Sir, no. Why do you think it is he's treading lightly here?
Well, Rena, I think that he had one important mission that he wanted to cover, and he did so right out of the gate, which is to make 2 points about the Mueller probe. One is that he would not interfere, and two is that he would do his best to make sure that as much of the facts that come out see the light of day, because he said the American people deserve that. It's hard to go much further than that, and I have to give him credit, because he has to say, look, the default position of this report is that it's confidential. I, as Attorney General, if I'm confirmed, have to make some decisions about what can and can't be released. So I think he's going as far as he can, and I think he's done a good job so far at making viewers feel like, look, he's going in, he's going to be an adult, and transparency is what he is striving for.
It was interesting. I'm curious what you made of the exchange when Senator Mazie Hirono from Hawaii asked him and said, you know, Jeff Sessions recused himself. Would you recuse yourself from Mueller? And then he came forward and he said, well, that was different. That was a political reason that he had to recuse himself. And she said, but you actually made a public case to try and get this nomination from the president, whether that's true or not. She put that out there. What did you make of that, the fact that she's already asking for him to recuse himself? And should he recuse himself?
Rena, I mean, I've watched since the beginning this morning, and that back and forth between Bill Barr and Senator Hirono was definitely the most contentious of the day so far. You know, with her laying out this groundwork of the Sessions model, which is that he pledged in advance that he would follow the guidance by the ethics office. And Bill Barr has said, you know, not so fast. You know, I will certainly listen to what they have to say, but I, as Attorney General, ultimately make the decision whether to recuse myself, and I'm not going to relinquish that authority. And that's a point he's made on a couple of different topic areas here. He has refused to make sort of outright pledges and said, look, there are decisions that I'll have to make in my judgment if and when I'm confirmed, and I'm not going to pledge to you today whether it's a recusal or a release just to get the job.
Yeah. Democrats also took issue, Joseph, with the fact of the memo that Barr wrote about obstruction of justice. I want to play it for you, an exchange with Senator Feinstein on that issue.
In your June 2018 memo about obstruction of justice to the Mueller investigation, you repeatedly referred to Mueller's, quote, sweeping and all-encompassing interpretation of Section 1512, which is a statute on obstruction. How do you know what Mueller's interpretation of 1512 is?
Well, as I said, I was speculating. I freely said at the beginning, I was writing in the dark, and we're all in the dark. Every lawyer, every talking head, everyone who thinks about or talks about it doesn't have the facts.
So I spent my Saturday reading that memorandum. Yeah. So are you saying this is all your speculation? It's a big memo.
Well, it was informed to the extent that I thought that that was one of the theories being considered. And I don't know how seriously, whether it was being considered or how seriously it was being considered. But as a shorthand way in the memo of referring to what I was speculating might be the theory, I referred to it as Mueller's theory, rather than go in every time I mention it, say, well, this is speculative.
Do you know what Mueller's interpretation of 1512 is?
No, I don't know what Mueller's interpretation. Okay. But and just one point, Senator, I think, you said in your opening statement, I said he was grossly irresponsible. I think I said if something happens, it would be grossly irresponsible. I was not calling Mueller grossly irresponsible.
I understand.
So, Joseph, the fact that Barr admits that he doesn't know Mueller's interpretation, does it undercut in any way the argument that he's trying to make there?
Well, Rena, not surprisingly, this memo and its reasoning and its origin is going to continue to be a point of contention here, right? Democrats they're entitled to ask, you know, what prompted you to write this and what thinking went into it? I think that, you know, nominee Barr did the best he could by saying, look, I don't have any kind of inside information here from either Mueller or the Trump side. I, as a retired former attorney general, as an American citizen, as an attorney, I speculated in what I read in the newspapers. Here's what Mueller may be pursuing, and here's my thoughts about it. Take it or leave it. I think he was also wise to point out that he separately wrote a piece about whether to charge Senator Menendez by the Justice Department, a point they did not take, obviously. So I think that it's going to continue to be a basis for questioning throughout the day and tomorrow, but I think he parried it well by his explanation.
You know, if confirmed, do you think that Mueller would then have to share his views on obstruction of justice with Barr?
Well, remember, it's not a day-to-day supervisory position the Attorney General would have over the special counsel probe, right? It's a more high-level getting involved when major decisions have to be made. So I don't think that if confirmed, he would kind of dig right in and sort of put Bob Mueller on the spot and ask him about his theories. I think he would appropriately wait until major decisions have to be made, and then when a conclusion is reached, he may or may not weigh into that ultimate conclusion. I think he would take a lighter touch. I think he realizes how much scrutiny he will be under, particularly because of this memo and the views he has shared publicly, and therefore I do not think he'll weigh in on a day-to-day basis.
You know, Barr was questioned about the relationship between the president and the Justice Department. Here's what he had to say. Here's how he explained his views.
In it, you stated, and I quote, "The framers' plan contemplates that the president's law enforcement powers extend to all matters, including those in which he had a personal stake," end quote. Please explain what you base this conclusion on.
Yes. Here's the Department of Justice right here. And within the Department of Justice, enforcement decisions are being made. The president's over here. And I think of it as there are two categories of potential communications. One would be on a case that the president wants to communicate about that he has no personal interest in, no political interest in. Let's say the president's concerned about Chinese stealing trade secrets and say, I want you to go after this company that's being, that may be stealing trade secrets. That's perfectly appropriate for him to do, to communicate that. But whether it's bona fide or not, the Department of Justice's obligation and the Attorney General's obligation is not to take any action unless the Department of Justice and the Attorney General, reach their own independent conclusion that it is justified under the law, and regardless of the instruction. And that's my quote that everyone is saying, I'm sicking the, it's okay for the president to direct things. All I said was, it's not per se improper for the president to call on the department for doing something, especially if he has no personal or political interest in it. The other category of cases, and let's pick an easy bad example, would be if a member of the president's family or a business associate or something was under investigation and he tries to intervene. He's the chief law enforcement officer, and you could say, well, he has the power, but that would be a breach of his obligation under the Constitution to faithfully execute the laws. So, in my opinion, if a president attempts to intervene in a matter that he has a stake in to protect himself, that should first be looked at as a breach of his constitutional duties.
So, Joseph, after hearing that, do you get a read on whether Barr will be the defender of the president of the United States or a defender of an independent judicial system?
Rena, I think that was a great dialogue. I salute Senator Feinstein for asking the question, and I think it was a great explanation. Because people ask all the time, they say, well, the Attorney General is chosen by the president, but then we expect him to be independent. And, nominee Barr laid it out pretty well to say, look, there are times when the Attorney General gives legal advice to the White House and has input on policy decisions. However, when it comes to my role as enforcer of the laws, there should be this arm's length relationship. And there is a point where it would be inappropriate for the president to weigh in or seek information on investigations that may affect him personally or his family. So I liked that back and forth. I thought it was a really good explanation. And hopefully, if he's confirmed, the American people will walk away with some sense that he will be fair and he will not be the president's attorney.
Mm-hmm. Ever since the Mueller probe started, there's always been concerns that the president would ask whoever his AG is to stop that probe. Barr was just flat out asked about that today.
If the president orders the Attorney General to halt a criminal investigation for personal reasons. Would that be prohibited under your theory?
Prohibited by what?
By
the Constitution.
the Constitution?
I think it would be a breach of the president's duties to faithfully execute the law. It would be an abuse of power.
What's the message that goes to the president after that response?
Look, that's exactly the right answer, right? I mean, that is what we expect in an attorney general to say, look, I serve the president to an extent, right, in his capacity as the chief executive. However, there's a limit to that, and I will not be bullied into doing something that's wrong. I think it was a great response. I think it's exactly what needed to be said. And again, I salute the nominee for saying that.
You know, Joseph, based on our conversation, it seems like it seems to me that you've got a pretty positive assessment of Barr on this. I'm curious, though, how do you think Barr has navigated these questions about allowing Mueller to continue his work? And do you think he makes it through to the AG position?
Look, I think the expectation with 53 Republicans controlling the Senate is that barring some, absolute catastrophe, he gets confirmed. And he realizes that his test is not how he performs today and tomorrow. It's how he performs over the next 2 years, because at some point this probe will come to an end and he'll have to make some pretty significant decisions. So I'm very heartened to see his performance so far. He is, he is a absolute professional. He is good at this. He's a great witness. He knows how to answer questions, and he's given the right answers so far. There's yet to be seen how it goes the rest of today. I think there are some aggressive, senators on the Democrat side who will no doubt have some continuing tough questions for him. So we'll see how he does. But so far, it's been really, really good performance.
Joseph Moreno. Joseph, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Rena.